Dust hangs above Willow Bend Square like smoke. A crooked line of women waits under a warped plank that reads, "Hiring for ranch work." Men lean on posts and pretend they aren't listening. "Name," Foreman Caleb Ross says to a red-haired girl. "Mary Ellen." "Cook?" "Yes, sir." "McHenry Ranch." "Sunrise." He grins without warmth. Near the end of the line stands a woman in a faded green dress. Her hands are rough. Her eyes look like the last mile of a long road. June Merritt holds a small satchel of mended gloves, as if it's proof the world can't take back. "Next," Ross says. "I can cook, wash, mend, haul water, keep pace," June answers. Ross lets his gaze walk the length of her. "You? Soft as dough." "I can do it." Someone throws it like a pebble. "She can do it," crying. Ross flicks 2 fingers. "No charity. Step aside." A shoulder bumps June. She goes to her knees. Dust bites her palms. The satchel pops. Gloves skitter. She gathers them and locks her throat. "Not here." Across the street, a man sits on a wagon, jaw rough, hat low. Jonas Reed. Beside him, a boy with serious eyes and a scab on one knee. Eli. The boy tugs his sleeve. "Pa, she fell. I see her. Why don't we help?" "It isn't our affair." "They're mean," Eli says. He slips from the bench and runs to June. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" "I'm all right, sweetheart. My mama used to cry when people were mean." Jonas arrives on a breath he doesn't waste. Eli, wagon. "Pa, she needs work. Hire her." Ross strolls over, ledger under one arm. "Looking to hire, Reed? Try Bell." Knows sheets, knows manners. A polished woman at his shoulder smiles like a hymn. Eli stamps. "I want her." He points at June. Ross barks a laugh. "That one'll break an axe handle by looking at it." Jonas studies June. Dust on her cheek. A line of pride nobody trampled. The way she holds the satchel like somebody might still ask to see the work. The square leans closer. "June Merritt," Jonas says, steady. "If you'll come. Room and board. Fair pay." Ross's smile flattens. "Your funeral." June stands. The gloves go back into the satchel like an oath. She nods once and follows the wagon out through the hard faces. The road to River Edge Ranch runs along a dry creek. The house is 1 story with a porch. The lean-to barn leans too far, but it still holds. Inside, air remembers ash and meals for one. "You can use the room off the stove," Jonas says. "Thank you," June answers, setting the satchel down as if a loud sound could knock the newness loose. Eli peers around the doorframe. "Do you know songs?" "Lullabies." "Can you sing tonight?" Jonas clears his throat. "Let her rest." "It's all right," June says. "I will." The cupboard holds beans, 2 onions, a knob of salt pork, flour in a tin that whispers when tilted. June makes stew and thin fry bread. Jonas takes a spoonful and stops. "It's good," he says. "I needed the dough," Eli says. "You're the best kitchen hand I've had," June answers, and the boy stands taller. Days learn their route. June rises before the sun, sets fire, hauls water until her arms sing, mends shirts with seams that hold. She does not mention the ache. She shows Eli to stitch straight, to whistle without spitting. At dusk, they step outside and point at the sky. "What's that one called?" Eli asks. "The Traveler." And beside it, the one for staying put. They get the names wrong on purpose just to laugh. Talk comes like weather. At the feed store, a man says, "Reed has a woman out there now." Another says, "Unmarried," and lets it hang. A buggy stops at the gate in the afternoon. Mrs. Hobbs, preacher's wife, sits straight as a post. "Mrs. Merritt," she says through the rails, "some in town are uneasy. An unmarried woman under a widower's roof with a child in the house, improper." "I work here," June says. Appearances are a kind of virtue. She turns the buggy and leaves a thread of cold behind. That night, June folds shirts on the porch. "They think it's wrong," she says. "Let them," Jonas answers. eyes on a field that needs rain. Eli laughed today. That's worth more than what they sell in town. You'll lose business. I lost enough when Sarah died, he says, softer. The boy's laugh is profit. Inside, Eli lines 3 cups on the table. He doesn't say the names. Wind shifts mean after midnight. A lantern ticks on a nail. June wakes with metal in her mouth and smoke. Jonas, she coughs. Outside, Orange climbs the barn. Eli! Jonas goes barefoot across the yard. June pumps water until the lever bucks. Buckets smack her knees. She bails across the porch, across the first tongues of flame. A seam in the roof pops. Sparks drift toward the house. Eli stands on the step, eyes too wide. Inside! Jonas yells. June wet wraps a cloth over the boy's nose and presses another to his hands. Under the table, don't move till I call. She runs for the stalls. A mare screams, hooves ring the boards. Jonas lunges for a halter. A falling beam clips his ribs and steals his breath. Back, he rasps. June cuts the lead with a kitchen knife she remembered by miracle. The mare slams her into a post. White pain flares down her arm. She grabs a hot rail, skin sizzles, and forces the gate with everything she refuses to lose. The mare bolts through smoke and disappears. Dry hay jumps flame. Heat shoves them backward. The roof goes with a roar. They drop flat as a beam scythes where they stood. Sparks rain until the yard becomes a field of bitter stars. Jonas finds June's sleeve and pulls. They hit dirt and stay down until the barn is a black rib cage. The house still stands, wet black from thrown water. Somewhere in the dark, a horse keens once and goes quiet. Here, Eli calls from under the table, small and brave. Jonas laughs once, broken and grateful. June presses her burned palm against her chest and lets herself shake for 5 heartbeats. Then she stands, because someone has to. All right, she says. We start again. Morning rides in on clean hats. Ross leads, ledger under his arm, boot black fresh. 2 councilmen perch behind. Mrs. Hobbs comes last and keeps her eyes on her mare's ears. Ross points at the ruin. Chaos follows sin. We put out a fire, Jonas answers. His voice is frayed. He keeps his arm tight to his ribs. You lit it bringing scandal home, Ross snaps. Council meets at noon. Either you send the woman away or you make it proper. Else we ask hard questions about the boy. Eli hides behind June's skirt. June stands straighter, though her hand is wrapped in throbs. Don't threaten a child. Mrs. Hobbs looks from barn to man to woman, at the burn wrap, at soot on Jonas's jaw, at the boy who won't let go of June's dress. Something weathers across her face and is gone. We must consider the community, she says. They ride away. June goes inside and packs the only way a person can when there's not much to choose. A dress, a mending kit, the satchel with the gloves. Jonas fills the doorway. You're not running. I won't cost you your son. You saved him last night. Talk doesn't care. Then we end talk, he says, and that is a nail-driven flush. By noon, the sky is iron and heavy with rain it owes. Jonas hitches the wagon. He helps June climb in and lifts Eli between them. Willow Bend stops pretending to work when iron rims clatter on stone. Come to beg? Ross calls from the courthouse steps. Came to choose, Jonas says. He helps June down. The preacher steps out as if pushed. Marry us, Jonas says. Gasps skip across the square. Ross shoulders forward. This farce? No. Jonas faces him. You mocked her once. She walked through fire for my house and my son. She works harder burned than you work whole. I choose her. Rain starts soft. The preacher hesitates, then nods. If both consent. I do, June says. The square hears the steadiness. I do, Jonas echoes. A punch comes from the edge of the crowd. Jonas takes it to the cheek and staggers. Eli screams. June lifts her bandaged hand. Touch him again, she says, low, and you answer to me. The man backs off. The preacher rushes the last words. Husband and wife, done. Jonas kisses her in the rain, not soft, certain. Eli wraps both arms around their legs and shakes with a cry that is relief and joy. Some clap, some turn away. Most stand quiet, like something inside the town shifts half an inch. They ride home through wet cedar and steam. A tarp by the fence covers what was lost. June sets her splinted hand on the canvas. "I'm sorry, girl," she whispers. "We'll make a marker," Eli says. "We will," Jonas answers. Inside, June cleans Jonas's cheek and binds his ribs with a strip torn from his best shirt. He splints her palm with cedar he sands himself. "That was your good one," she says. "You're my better," he answers, and means it. Eli falls asleep at the table. June and Jonas step onto the porch. Rain slows to hush. "I would have left if you'd asked," June says. "I know," Jonas answers. "That's why I couldn't let you. I was afraid. So was I." He looks at the black ribs of the barn. We build again, smaller, stronger. Morning brings 2 wagons that do not belong to Ross. Mrs. Hobbs climbs down, hat in hand. "The churchwomen sent flour," she says. She holds a spool of thread. "And thread for the mare's shroud. It seemed right." "Thank you," June says. A man from the far pasture speaks to his boots. "We can set posts." Another clears his throat. "Got spare nails." They dig. They lift. By noon, a new beam stands. June can't grip, but she braces with her hip, corrects a slanted board, laughs when Eli trips over the water bucket, and comes up grinning with a wet hat. Jonas drives pegs with a careful rhythm he didn't own last year. At dusk, they carry the tarp to the cedar line. Jonas builds a small cairn from river stones. Eli lays a halter across the stack. June ties a knot one-handed and sets a horseshoe upright, open end to the sky. "For luck," Eli whispers. "For memory," June answers. The next week is a long walk on tender ground. Work fits around injury. June learns to anchor pans with her forearm and flip bread with a wrist that complains. Jonas learns to lift with his legs. Eli learns he is allowed to be useful. He carries nails with pride. At night, June sings in a voice that isn't pretty, but is warm and steady and wraps the room. Neighbors begin to come without reasons. A woman brings eggs and a pie that leans to one side and leaves quick as a rabbit. 2 boys show up with a sack of bent horseshoes for practice. A man comes by with rope he found and didn't need, and he stares at the ground hard enough to plant something there. The cairn becomes a stop on everyone's path. June's hand finds the top stone each morning. One evening, Ross rides the fence line and does not cross it. He looks at the new beam, at June in the yard, with her palm wrapped in hair braided with a simple ribbon Eli chose. He turns his horse and goes. Harvest creeps close. The creek runs low, but it runs. Days sow themselves into a season that can hold weight. June learns where the house keeps breeze. Jonas gives Eli work he can own. The boy sleeps better. The square talks less. A woman asks Ross something he doesn't answer fast. A man at the feed store says, "husband and wife," without contempt. Mrs. Hobbs takes the long way around the mercantile and buys quiet. A child from the next homestead falls from a mule. His father brings him to River Edge because someone said June knows cloth and steady hands. June stitches the boy's scalp with thread and whiskey. "Reckon you saved him a scar," the father says. "Reckon he earned one anyhow," June answers. "We'll keep the one on the inside." When they leave, the father puts a silver washer on the table. "For luck," he says. "For memory." Son finds it on a nail by the stove and throws a coin of light on the floor. Monsoon comes. Rain rights the roof. The creek fattens. Jonas walks the porch and listens to nails sing. "It'll hold," June says. "You sure?" "No," she says, "but I'm sure you will." Eli appears with a blanket. "You get cold," he tells June. "So do you," she answers, but takes it. They stand like a fort. The storm passes. In the morning, the cairn shines. On market day, they ride into Willow Bend for salt and wire and a kettle because the old one leaks. The sign still says, hiring. A woman with a baby asks June about bread. June shows her hands and tells her to listen for the breath inside. Ross sees them. Read, he says, curt. To June, he nods once. They pass each other without splinters. June buys ribbon because Eli chooses it. Jonas buys nails because you can't have too many. Eli buys a peppermint and breaks it in two. At home, Jonas hangs the kettle and looks at it as if it were a window. Eli gives a flake of peppermint to the cairn because he thinks sweetness belongs anywhere there was pain. Autumn leans in. The beam darkens. The house learns a second quilt. Eli's reading comes in jumps. June pins small scraps that say stove and door and sky. Jonas writes home in shy hand and tucks it above the lintel. June finds it and leaves it there because moving it would lie. On the first sharp morning, Mrs. Hobbs comes on foot, basket in hand. I was wrong, she says on the porch. I said appearances are virtue. I forgot that work is, and courage. If you'd let me, I'd like to help mend winter things for the valley families. We'll set the table wide, June answers. They sew. The kettle ticks. Jonas fixes a hinge that squealed for a year. Eli reads 4 words in a row. When Mrs. Hobbs leaves, she holds June's gaze like a lesson she means to keep. That night, June stands by the cedar line with ribbon in her hair and her hand on the top stone. Jonas comes up behind. You all right? Yes, she says. For the first time, I am not just passing through a life. I am in it. Winter cuts, but the house holds warmth like a promise. Snow comes small, and then fat, and then not at all. Eli loses 2 teeth and learns a longer whistle and figures out that reading is like walking. You put 1 foot down, then the next. They host neighbors to string apples and to mend a fence rail. In town, people say June Reed sometimes Mrs. Reed, sometimes just June the way you say rain when you mean the good kind. On the longest night, June stitches the last line of a quilt that has no pattern except what we had. She spreads it over Eli where he sleeps. Jonas watches. Thank you, he says. For what? For seeing us when we were thin. You were never invisible, she says. Not to me. Spring remembers generosity. The creek is a ribbon worth naming. The new barn takes paint. Eli hammers small nails and calls them soldiers. Jonas lifts a crossbeam with 3 men and smiles. June sows beans, hope, and something she can't name yet. They ride into town again. The square holds another line of women. A stranger stands in a dress the color of road and holds a satchel of mended gloves. June steps beside Ross. What can you do? She asks. Cook, wash, mend, haul water, keep pace, the woman says. River Edge needs hands, June answers. Fair pay, room and board. The square does not breathe for 3 heartbeats and then lets air go. At home, Jonas sets another plate. The house makes room the way houses should when people remember what they're for. They stand on the porch at dusk, man, woman, boy, and listen to the cedar line say the old true thing. Storms pass, work remains, love is a choice you make out loud. Welcome home, Jonas says. I'm already here, June answers. Above the new barn, stars set bright nails in black wood. The ranch is not whole, neither are they, but both are held together by what survived the fire, a shroud stitched with thread given in awkward apology, a cairn that will not be moved, a beam raised by neighbors who didn't have to come, a child's laugh that found its way back from ash, and 2 people who chose each other in the rain. We are home, together.